everyone and welcome back to my little corner of the internet. My name is Evian and I am absolutely obsessed with this hat. So, what do you think about my new setup? I actually really like it. It's got a lot of greens. I like green. Anyway, this is not why we're here today. Today we are actually making a hat and styling a wig and maybe doing a makeup test, but you know, let's be honest. This thing is definitely the star of the show. And it does something weird with the white balance on the camera every time I bring it out, so I'm going to put it away again. If you're new here and you don't already know, I am currently making a video series that follows the process of making a Marisa cosplay from Toho. I have already posted a video on how I plan the entire costume, and I have also posted a video on how I do the undergarments, and they are both posted somewhere up here, and they're also gonna be linked in the description below, so you can just follow along with the process if you want to. With all that out of the way, I think we can just get going. Let's go! To begin with, I wanted to make life as easy for myself as absolutely possible. So for the base of the hat, I began with the standard witch hat pattern which I purchased from A MARISA Cosplay. This was an absolutely great place to start, but I had to do quite a few modifications to it. I had to make it a lot larger, especially the brim of it, and I had to make sure the circumference of the head hole, I guess, would fit my head snugly with a wig on so it would sit securely on my head. I made a few paper mock-ups while working out the shape and size and landed on something I was rather happy with in the end. I wanted the hat to be both lightweight, sturdy and squishable, so I ended up with using two different materials for the base. For the cone, I used a kind of a thick felt that's sold in sheets at my local craft store, and for the brim itself I used 5mm EVA foam. The felt isn't as sturdy as the foam, but it pops back into its original shape even after having been squished in a suitcase for some days, so it was a good choice for me. This was all glued together using contact glue, and the seams on the cone were sewn together for some extra sturdiness, as it didn't take as well to the contact glue as the foam did. I shaped the brim with a bit of heat and then smoothed out the edges with my rotary tool. Since the base of the cone of the hat is pretty narrow to properly fit my head, I needed to make it wider on the outside, just to give that oversized feeling Marisa's hat has. For this I just used some spray glue and sheet batting. The good thing about this is that it also removes the sharp edges of where the felt is joined together. The next thing I needed to do was to make a pattern for the hat cover. For this I used a trusty old method of plastic wrap and tape. I only bothered to make a pattern for half of the hat since it's symmetrical. The pattern pieces were cut out and sewn together. I checked to make sure it fit, and it did! The brim was covered in fabric by using good old hot glue. First by making sure it was all set inside the cone, and then stretch from the middle and out to make it hug the foam base as wrinkle-free as possible. The pins helped me keep it all in place and stretched evenly while I worked on it. In the end, all the excess fabric was cut off. In hindsight, I probably could have made a cleaner job of this, as the edge is slightly visible on the final hat, but it's not a big problem. But now began the part I had been looking forward to the most. Lace and ruffles is my jam, and it's so fun to work with. The lace was gathered and sewn to a large circle made of plain cotton fabric, and this fabric was also interfaced with a light interfacing to give it just a bit of body to better hold the shape of the ruffles. To attach it to the hat, I pinned it evenly at 4 points around the inside of the cone and simply draped the fabric into how I wanted it to sit. This took me quite a few hours of finicking, but I got it in the end. The outer part of the ruffle was sewn to the brim with spaced stitches just to make sure it wouldn't slump and fall in my face while wearing it. The inner part of the ruffle was hot glued to the brim and reinforced with a few lacy stitches that I didn't film. More hot glue fastened the top cover of the brim to the cone, then I used a water-based glue thinly spread on the brim to make sure it would be secured to the hat surface. The edge was then sewn by hand for a neat finish. The cone cover was lazily attached with thread and needle as it would be all covered up anyway. A curved needle was a massive help here. The bottom edge of the sash around the hat was glued firmly in place, and when that was dry, the rest of the sash was draped to shape itself properly around the cone and look like it gathered into a knot on the front. The next thing to do here was to make the bow, and this did give me a bit of a headache. Du enig I det at blonder og bånd gjør alt bedre, du ikke det? Jo. Så sløyfa trenger litt blonder og bånd. Ja. Ja, det blir bra det med blonder og bånd. Ja, blonder og bånd bra. Da fikser vi blonder og bånd. The first bow I made turned out looking more like a pillow stuffed on top of a hat, and it didn't really match how delicate the lace ruffle was. So I decided to scratch it and just make a new bow. The new bow was slightly smaller and used a single sheet of 2mm foam as a cord to keep its shape. The only thing left to do now was to sew and attach the lining, and with that, the hat was done. Am I obsessed with it? Yes. Yes, I absolutely am. In the past, I have always waited with the wig until I am almost done with cosplay, but since I wanted to do a makeup test ASAP, I decided to start on it earlier in the project. I had this long, tangled mess of a wig lying around from a previous cosplay I will never wear again, so I decided to repurpose it for Marisa and detangled it. The only gripe I had about this wig was that it was too cool of a blonde compared to Marisa's golden hair. I decided to try to dye it a bit of a warmer color, but after a very failed dye test with lots of wasted dye and time, I realized I had forgotten all of my color theory, and I decided to drop the whole endeavor and keep the wig the color it was. So instead of giving the color more thought, I marked the length I wanted to cut it with bobby pins and got to it. The hair was just roughly chopped to begin with to make it easier to handle, before it was straightened and cut more neatly. I also cut layers into it to make sure the wig would have a nice and light bounce to it after it was curled. With little to no experience to curling a wig, I tried a lot of different methods to curl this one. I thought the method you see now was the one that would give me the best result, and the result was beautiful. That was until I brushed through it and it turned almost straight again. In the end, I just recurled the whole wig with foam rollers to make the waves defined enough. I don't have a lot of cohesive footage from the styling, but the bangs were cut, heat-shaped and teased before they were shaved, and all the roots on the entire wig was heavily teased to give the wig more volume. To make sure the braid in her hair would be full enough, I used some of the hair I had cut off from the length to make glued wefts out of. These were eventually glued into the wig and braided in with the rest of the hair. The area around it was teased to hide the exposed wefts. The end of the braid was teased before I cut it shorter, simply to build up enough volume in it. I also made and added a small bow with a bit of glue and hand sewing. It was all misted with some hairspray, and that was it for the wig! So, here's the thing. I did do a makeup test of Marisa. It turned out horrible. Like, really horrible. It went wrong from the very start. I pushed through, tried to film an outro with the makeup, and I really didn't like it. So, hello! This is me from the future, or 4 or 5 months since I filmed the intro. Yeah, this particular video has been a bit of a tough one. Just a smidgen. A lot has happened since I first filmed this intro. First of all, I finished a cosplay. That's fun. Second of all, I wore it to a convention and I competed with it, so even more fun. I will talk more about that in a later video, but it was a really good time. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I really despised the outcome of the makeup test I did of Marisa the day I was gonna film the outro for this video. So instead, here are some photos of the very first makeup test I did of her. So this was the first time I actually did a full makeup test of her. It's quite a while ago now, but I was very happy with how it turned out, and I did some changes to this makeup test and used different lenses and whatever later, but I was still very happy with this for a first try, and it gave me a good feel of the character. So even though this video didn't exactly end as I had planned with the full makeup and the hat on and cosplay and whatever, at least we are now done with the hat, we are done with the wig, and we have a makeup test to reference from. So in the next video we're gonna focus on making the skirt, the vest and the apron. And this is actually quite exciting because this is the main outfit and where it's actually gonna start coming together for real. And I am very excited to show you that because, spoiler alert, I am very happy with the results. Thank you guys so much for your patience, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!